The billionaire's laughter cut through the boardroom like a blade. "You built this?" Grant Voss sneered, ice cold behind his designer glasses. "A toy algorithm from a kid who still believes genius matters." The room erupted in cruel chuckles. But Cairo Bennett didn't flinch. His voice was calm, almost whisper-soft as he said, "Someday, this toy will protect everything you've built." For a heartbeat, their eyes locked, pride versus purpose, arrogance versus quiet brilliance. 30 minutes later, every screen in that same building went black. Servers crashed. Phones died. The empire collapsed. And the only person who could bring it back was the man Grant had just humiliated. Welcome, everyone, to one of the most powerful stories you'll hear today, a story about pride, redemption, and what happens when the person you look down on becomes the one who holds your fate. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. I'd love to see this story connect with hearts all over the world. And if you believe in second chances, or that karma always finds a way, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps us share more emotional, life-changing stories like this one. The morning sky bled gold over Manhattan as the city roared awake, horns, chatter, ambition humming through glass towers. Inside one of those towers, Voss Dynamics glimmered like a monument to power. Its lobby smelled of steel and success, its marble floors polished enough to reflect every nervous face that entered. And there, 24-year-old Cairo Bennett stood, clutching his backpack and laptop like a shield. He had dreamed of this moment for years, the chance to pitch his AI system, Aegis, to the biggest tech company in the country. But dreams have a cruel way of testing those who dare chase them. His reflection stared back from the glass elevator, brown skin, tired eyes, hope threaded with fear. He whispered to himself, "Stay sharp. Just get through it." Upstairs, on the 60th floor, Grant Voss was already a storm in a suit. 52 years old, ruthless, precise, the kind of man whose smile never reached his eyes. He'd built his billion-dollar empire from scratch and lost his soul along the way. His morning began with a news alert, another expose accusing his company of exploiting smaller startups. He slammed the tablet shut. "People love to hate success," he muttered, adjusting his cufflinks, hiding the tremor in his hand. In 20 minutes, he'd meet a lineup of innovators hoping to sell their technology. He didn't know, or care, that one of them would change his life. The conference room was vast and cold, with a glass wall overlooking the city. Cairo set up his laptop at the far end of the long table. His palms were sweaty, but his code, his creation, was flawless. Aegis wasn't just software, it was a shield, capable of predicting and neutralizing cyber threats before they happened. The future of cybersecurity, and he built it alone. The door opened. Grant Voss entered with 2 board members, his presence filling the room before he even spoke. "You're our last presentation today," he said flatly, not looking up from his phone. "Make it count." Cairo swallowed hard and began. "Good morning, Mr. Voss. I'm Cairo Bennett, founder of Horizon Tech Labs. What I've built," Grant raised a hand. "Spare me the motivational opener, son. Show me something that works." The room went silent. Cairo nodded and launched into his demo, fingers gliding over keys. The projection screen lit up with flowing lines of data, code adapting in real time, intercepting simulated attacks. It was mesmerizing, elegant. When it finished, he looked up, breathless, expecting awe. Instead, Grant leaned back, unimpressed. "It's cute," he said. The word landed like a slap. "Cute," Cairo repeated quietly. "Yes." "Ambitious." "Naive." Like something a student would bring to a science fair. "You're bright, but you don't understand scale. Security at this level isn't about clever code, it's about control. Something you'll learn once you've failed enough." The board members chuckled softly. Cairo's throat tightened. His fingers curled against his palm, leaving crescent marks. "With respect, sir," he said, voice trembling but firm, "you're wrong. Control isn't about power, it's about protection. Aegis was designed to prevent the kind of breach your company almost suffered last quarter. You didn't even notice it happened. The laughter stopped. Grant's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting we were compromised? I'm suggesting you were lucky, Cairo said. Your systems are vulnerable. You need this tech, even if you don't think you do. Grant smirked, tapping his pen. A lecture. How refreshing. He stood, walking closer. Let me save you some time, Mr. Bennett. I built this empire by recognizing value when I see it. And what I see here, he gestured toward the screen, is potential wrapped in arrogance. You're smart, but not ready. The world doesn't reward dreamers. It rewards killers. The word echoed in the sterile room. Cairo's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. He packed his laptop, his voice barely audible. Maybe that's why the world's so broken. He turned to leave, his steps echoing like defiance. Just as he reached the door, Grant called out, "Good luck out there, genius." The sarcasm dripped like poison. Cairo paused, just long enough for Grant to see his shoulders rise and fall. Then he walked out without looking back. Outside, rain began to fall, soft at first, then furious, drumming against the windows as the city blurred in grey streaks. In the elevator, Cairo's reflection looked older somehow. "Never let them make you small," he whispered. His phone buzzed, a message from his mother, "Proud of you no matter what happens, baby." He smiled faintly. Across the city, Grant Voss stood before his office window, watching the storm. He saw his reflection too, sharp suit, hollow eyes. His assistant entered, nervous. "Sir, the server's just flickered again. IT says it's nothing, but tell them to fix it." "I don't pay them to panic." The assistant hesitated. "And the young man, Bennett? Should I file his application for reconsideration?" Grant turned, expression unreadable. "Delete it." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating his face for a second, a man so used to winning that he'd forgotten what losing felt like. Yet, deep in the building's data center, a silent process had already begun. Code strings rewriting themselves. Firewalls trembling. A countdown no one could see ticking toward chaos. And miles away, in a small apartment cluttered with wires and coffee cups, Cairo stared at his code. Something was off. The network logs from his presentation, encrypted files from Voss Dynamics, were behaving strangely. He frowned, fingers flying across the keyboard. That's not right, a sudden realization hit him. If he was correct, the company's core servers were seconds away from collapse. He grabbed his phone, hesitated. Call them? After what he said. His pride screamed no. His conscience whispered yes. And somewhere between the two, thunder rolled over the city. The rain hadn't stopped. It sheeted against the skyline like the world itself was being rinsed clean. In the high tower of Voss Dynamics, lightning flickered, and for a heartbeat the lights dimmed. In the control room 2 floors below Grant's office, alarms blipped, first soft, then insistent, then shrill. "Sir, we're getting multiple breach alerts," a technician shouted. "It's a glitch," another muttered, typing furiously. "It has to be." But within seconds every monitor filled with red code. The company's digital heart, the system that powered contracts, financials, patents, everything, was being eaten alive. Across the world, clients lost access. Bank accounts froze. In minutes the empire began to bleed. Grant Voss stepped into the control room, his presence slicing through the panic. "Talk to me," he snapped. "Is this external?" It's everywhere," the head of cybersecurity stammered. "We can't identify the source. It's adapting faster than our defenses." Grant's jaw tightened. "Shut down all external access. Pull the plug if you have to." "Sir, if we pull it, we could lose terabytes of data. Do it." Grant barked. But even as they tried, the screens went black. Then one came back on, glowing with a single line of text, "You should have listened." Silence spread through the room. Someone whispered, "Sir, what does that mean?" Grant's mind flashed to a young man's steady voice hours earlier. "You need this tech. Even if you don't think you do." "Find him," Grant muttered. "Find Cairo Bennett." Miles away, Cairo sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, watching lines of malicious code tear through a virtual simulation of the same system. "No way," he whispered. This wasn't his doing, but the virus looked eerily familiar. Someone had twisted his Aegis prototype into a weapon. He felt sick. The apartment lights flickered. His phone buzzed with unknown numbers. He ignored the first two, then finally answered the third. "Mr. Bennett," a clipped voice said, "this is Director Reeves from Voss Dynamics. We're in an emergency. Mr. Voss requests your assistance immediately." Cairo almost laughed. "He requests my what?" "Your help, sir. He says it's urgent." Cairo's first instinct was to hang up. He saw again the look of contempt on Grant's face, the sound of that mocking laughter. "He's got the best tech team money can buy. He doesn't need me." "They can't contain it," Reeves said. "We're facing total system failure within the hour." Cairo closed his eyes. Pride screamed, "Let him drown." But his father's voice echoed from memory, "You can be angry, son, but don't ever be small." He sighed. "Send me the access logs. I'll look." 20 minutes later, a black sedan slid to the curb outside his apartment. When Cairo stepped in, his reflection in the tinted glass looked different, a man walking back into the lion's den. The car ride was silent, broken only by thunder. He entered Voss Dynamics to a scene of chaos, alarms flashing, phones ringing, executives shouting. Grant stood in the center like a captain watching his ship sink. Their eyes met. "You came," Grant said, voice low. "Don't flatter yourself," Cairo replied. "I came to stop something bigger than your ego." Without waiting for permission, he walked straight to the nearest terminal. Technician stepped aside as his fingers danced across the keys. Lines of code filled the screen, rapid, efficient, purposeful. "Who authorized remote admin ports?" he demanded. "We disabled those hours ago," one tech said. "Then someone inside re-enabled them," Cairo shot back. Grant frowned. "You're saying this is an inside job?" "I'm saying your house isn't just on fire," someone handed the match to the arsonist. The silence that followed was heavy. Cairo worked relentlessly, muttering calculations under his breath. "This code is personal," he whispered. "Whoever built it studied Aegis. They had access to my presentation files." He glanced at Grant. "Did your people copy my demo?" Grant hesitated. "We back up all visitor data for security reasons." Cairo's laugh was bitter. "Security. Right." He typed faster, tracing the virus's origin. "Congratulations, Mr. Voss. You mocked the man who could have saved you, then you stole from him." Grant's face tightened. "What's your tone?" "Or what?" "You'll fire me." Cairo didn't look up. "You don't have control anymore. The system does." For the first time, Grant had no answer. He watched as the young man he dismissed hours earlier took command of his entire operations floor with quiet, terrifying efficiency. Every keystroke from Cairo echoed with something between fury and brilliance. Within 40 minutes, Cairo isolated a pattern, a feedback loop hidden inside the financial servers. "They're collapsing your ledger," he said. "If this continues, your entire global network will implode." "How long do we have?" Grant asked. "Maybe 30 minutes. Then fix it." "I'm trying," Cairo said sharply. "But I need full root access." Grant looked to his IT chief, who shook his head. "That would give him unrestricted control of our systems." "You don't have a choice," Cairo snapped. "Either trust me or watch your empire burn." The room froze. Grant stared at him, pride and panic warring in his eyes. Finally he said, "Do it." Cairo's fingers flew again. Command scrolled, numbers shifted, the building's lights dimmed. Sweat trickled down his temple. "I can stop the spread," he muttered, "but I need your network key." "My what?" "The master encryption key." "Only you have it." "That key gives access to everything, my entire infrastructure." Cairo's gaze was steel. "Then you better decide what matters more, control or survival." Grant hesitated for one long breath, then entered the key. For a heartbeat nothing happened. Then the monitors flickered, stabilizing, data streams slowed, firewalls reformed. Gasps rippled through the room. "It's working," someone said. "He's reversing it." Cairo's hands didn't stop. "Not yet," he muttered. "Whoever did this left a backdoor." He traced the code to a shadow file, encrypted under an alias, VD internal. His eyes widened. "It's coming from inside your executive network." Grant's face went pale. "What are you saying?" "Someone high up, maybe someone you trust, planted this. They used fragments of my own algorithm to make it look like sabotage from me." Grant's voice dropped. "Find them." Cairo nodded grimly. "I will." Minutes later he executed a final patch. The main servers whirred back to life, one by one. Relief flooded the room, but Grant barely breathed. He stepped closer to Cairo. "Why help me?" Cairo didn't look up. "Because some things are bigger than pride." "After what I said to you, don't," Cairo cut him off. "I didn't come here for an apology. I came because people's jobs, data, and safety are at risk. That's bigger than your ego or my hurt." Grant said nothing. His throat tightened with something foreign, guilt. For a man used to buying everything, the realization that respect couldn't be purchased was sobering. As Cairo logged out, Grant spoke softly. "You're not just talented, Mr. Bennett. You're extraordinary." Cairo turned. "Funny how fast respect shows up when you're desperate." Grant flinched. "You've earned more than that. I owe you." Cairo's voice was low, steady. "You owe me nothing. Just don't ever underestimate someone again because of where they come from." With that he packed his laptop. The chaos around them settled into uneasy calm. But beneath that calm, both men knew the story wasn't over. As Cairo walked toward the elevator, Grant watched him go, a strange heaviness in his chest, shame, admiration, fear. The young man had walked in as the one he mocked, and left as the one who saved him. And yet something in Grant's gut whispered that the danger wasn't gone, just waiting. In the reflection of the elevator doors, Cairo saw his own face, calm but tired. He exhaled deeply, whispering, "It's never just code. It's people." Outside, dawn was breaking, pale light piercing the rain. He didn't know that this was only the beginning, that before the day ended, he'd face not only betrayal, but a truth that would shake everything he believed about his father, his past, and the man he had just saved. The storm passed, but inside Voss Dynamics, the air still felt electric, charged with tension and unspoken things. The virus was contained, the company saved, but no one was celebrating. Every hallway whispered Cairo Bennett's name. Some said he was a miracle, others called him a risk. Grant Voss stood at his office window, the city gleaming below, his reflection split by raindrops. He had built his life around power, control, certainty, dominance. But for the first time in years, he felt small. The image of Cairo working at that terminal wouldn't leave his mind, steady hands, unflinching eyes, and that quiet defiance that refused to bow. He envied that strength, even as it unsettled him. "Sir," his assistant, Lydia, said softly. "The board wants an update. Tell them the breach is handled." "And the boy?" "Not a boy," Grant muttered, still staring out the window. "A man who just made me look foolish." Later that morning, the company resumed operations. But beneath the hum of servers and the chatter of recovery meetings, unease ran deep. Cairo was invited back temporarily, as a consultant, they said, to ensure there were no further threats. It sounded like gratitude, but it felt like surveillance. When he entered the building again, stares followed him like shadows. Some curious, some suspicious. Grant greeted him with a strained smile. "Welcome back." "You mean, welcome under watch," Cairo replied. "You think I can't feel it?" Grant sighed. "You're not under watch. We're evaluating what happened." "Evaluating if you can trust me," Cairo said flatly. "You can't fix a system if you don't trust the person trying to save it." Grant rubbed his temples. "You have no idea what's at stake." "No, Mr. Voss," Cairo said, setting his laptop down. "You have no idea what trust costs someone like me." The words hung heavy. He wasn't just talking about code. Hours passed in uneasy silence. Cairo worked from a glass office overlooking the operations floor, tracing code fragments, cross-referencing log files, hunting the insider responsible. Grant drifted between meetings, his attention splintered. The company's investors demanded answers, the media speculated sabotage. Each time someone mentioned the young man who saved everything, Grant's chest tightened, half pride, half guilt. Late that night, Cairo sat alone, headphones in, just humming softly as lines of code flickered before him. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but he kept digging. Somewhere in the mountain of data, he saw something strange, an encrypted message hidden in the system logs. A phrase, he never saw the cost. His stomach twisted. The breach wasn't just an attack. It was personal. He printed the logs and walked toward Grant's office. The CEO was still there, sleeves rolled, eyes bloodshot. "You don't sleep either?" Cairo asked. Grant looked up. "You think men like me get to?" Cairo set the papers down. "Someone inside wanted you destroyed. But they used my technology to do it. You stole my files, that gave them the blueprint. Whoever did this knows your world, your network, maybe your habits. You're accusing my people." "I'm accusing your trust," Cairo said quietly. "You put faith in systems that don't deserve it. Just like you didn't think I deserved it." Grant's expression hardened. "You think this is about race, don't you?" "No," Cairo said, voice calm. "It's about respect. And you made it clear who earns yours." Silence filled the space between them. Then Grant surprised himself. "You're right." Cairo blinked. "What?" "You're right," Grant said, voice low. "I looked at you and saw potential. But not equality. That's on me." The honesty in his tone was disarming, but Cairo wasn't ready to forgive. "Acknowledgement doesn't erase damage," he said. Grant nodded slowly. "Neither does anger." For a long time, they just looked at each other, two men bound by the same storm, neither willing to bend. In the following days, tension simmered. They worked side by side, their communication curt, their respect grudging. When Grant offered suggestions, Cairo ignored them. When Cairo pushed boundaries, Grant bristled. Pride clashed with pride. But the crisis refused to fade. Another anomaly appeared, smaller but sharper, like a ghost in the machine. "It's evolving," Cairo murmured one afternoon, studying the logs. "This isn't just a virus. It's learning." "You mean artificial?" "No," Cairo said grimly. "Human. Someone's guiding it." He stood, his pulse racing. "We're not out of danger." "Then what do you need?" Grant asked. "Access to your private terminals. Every executive's activity." "That's confidential," Grant said quickly. "Not anymore. You're asking me to turn against my own people. I'm asking you to face reality." Their gazes locked, the billionaire unwilling to cede control, the genius unwilling to stop pushing. "Fine," Grant snapped. "You get access. But if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, I'll walk away for good," Cairo interrupted. Grant hesitated, then nodded. "Deal." For the next 48 hours, Cairo barely left his desk. Coffee replaced sleep. He found irregularities, login attempts from obscure accounts, traces of someone using his original demo data weeks before the breach. Whoever it was, they were close to Grant's circle. Late one night, as Cairo traced the final string of code, he heard the soft click of the office door. Grant entered quietly. "You're still here." "So are you," Cairo replied without looking up. "You ever go home?" Grant walked closer, studying him. "You remind me of myself 20 years ago. Hungry. Brilliant. Alone." Cairo smirked faintly. "That's supposed to be comforting." "It's supposed to be a warning," Grant said. "Ambition's a fire. It keeps you alive, but it burns everything else." Cairo finally looked up. "Then maybe you were chasing the wrong things." Grant's mouth tightened. "You don't know what I've lost." "Then tell me." "Why would I?" "Because the truth always leaks through the code," Cairo said softly. "Even in people." For the first time, Grant didn't deflect. His gaze drifted to the city lights below. "I built all this because I thought it would make me untouchable. But when you have everything, you realize how hollow it feels. My wife left years ago. My son won't speak to me. Success didn't save me, it made me unrecognizable." Cairo listened in silence. For a moment, he saw not the titan who mocked him, but a man haunted by his own empire. "Maybe this breach isn't your punishment," he said quietly. "Maybe it's your reset." Grant turned to him. "And what about you, Cairo? What drives you?" Cairo hesitated, eyes flickering with something raw. "My father. He was a systems engineer. Brilliant. He worked his whole life to expose corruption in a company that buried him. He died trying to do the right thing. I guess I'm just trying to finish what he started." "What company?" Grant asked. Cairo looked away. "Doesn't matter. It's long gone." But something in Grant's chest stirred, an echo of recognition he couldn't place. The conversation ended there, but the air between them had shifted. Mutual hostility softened into something else, wary understanding. Yet both still resisted the pull. Pride is a heavy armor, and neither was ready to remove it. As dawn painted the city silver, Cairo leaned back in his chair, exhausted. Grant stood nearby, hands in pockets. "You saved us twice now," he said. "Don't make a habit of it." Cairo chuckled under his breath. "Don't give me reasons to." "You think I can change?" Grant asked suddenly. Cairo looked at him, studying the cracks in his facade. "I think anyone can, if they actually want to." Grant nodded slowly, then walked away, leaving Cairo alone with his thoughts. The screen before him flickered. Another line of code appeared, one he hadn't written. Just 3 words, "You're getting close." Cairo froze. Whoever was behind the attack was watching. He saved the logs, heart pounding. This was no longer just about redemption or revenge, it was survival. The city didn't sleep that week. News of the Voss Dynamics cyber breach leaked, headlines flashing across every major network. Stock prices dipped, whispers of insider sabotage spread, and the board demanded federal involvement. Within 48 hours, the FBI's cybercrime division arrived, and their decision changed everything. For the integrity of the investigation, the lead agent announced, "All core staff with security clearance must remain on-site until we verify data integrity. That includes Mr. Voss and Mr. Bennett." The room fell silent. Cairo and Grant exchanged a look that said everything, trapped together. For the first time in his life, Grant wasn't the one giving orders. Agent sealed the building, confiscated personal devices, and turned the top floors into a temporary operations hub. Beds were rolled into conference rooms. Food deliveries replaced executive lunches. Power dynamics dissolved into survival logistics. Cairo set up at a small workstation beside the panoramic window overlooking the rain-drenched skyline. Grant worked across from him, close enough for silence to grow heavy but not close enough for comfort. Hours turned into days. The investigation crawled. The tension between them evolved from hostility to something quieter, the unease of two men forced to face themselves. Cairo's focus never wavered. He studied log files, reconstructed the breach's origin, and identified fragments of hidden code that kept regenerating. It wasn't just an attack, it was a conversation, someone taunting him, challenging his intellect line by line. Each night he murmured to himself, "I'll find you." Across the room, Grant watched him work. The young man's intensity reminded him of his own early years, the hunger, the long nights, the conviction that brilliance could conquer the world. But there was something else Cairo had that Grant had lost long ago: heart. Late one night, as rain tapped the windows like fingers, Grant broke the silence. "You ever think about what you'd do if you had my resources?" Cairo didn't look up. "Fix things. That's it. That's everything," Cairo said. Grant smirked faintly. "You sound like I used to. Before the world taught me better." Cairo paused, turning toward him. "Or maybe it just taught you to stop trying." Grant's gaze dropped to his hands, the hands that had signed hundreds of deals, crushed competitors, and built empires. For the first time, they looked tired. "You're not wrong," he admitted. "But it's easier to lose faith than fight for it." Cairo studied him, something softening in his chest. "You ever wonder if it's not the world that changes, just us?" Grant gave a hollow laugh. "Every damn day." A long silence settled between them. Outside, thunder rolled, distant but steady. Cairo returned to his screen, but Grant's words lingered. For a man who had mocked him, Grant now sounded almost human. The next morning, tension returned in another form. An agent named Lewis approached Cairo's desk. "We need to verify your code signatures," he said. "Standard protocol." "You've already verified them twice," Cairo replied. "Orders from higher up." "Hand it over." Grant looked up from across the room. "Agent Lewis, that won't be necessary." "With respect, sir, it's mandatory." "And with respect," Grant said, standing, "you're treating the man who saved this company like a suspect." The entire room went still. Cairo froze. For the first time, Grant Voss wasn't defending himself, he was defending him. The agent's expression hardened, but he backed off. "We'll revisit this later." When he left, Cairo whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Grant shrugged. "You did enough for me. Consider it even." But something in Grant's voice said it wasn't about debt, it was about dignity. The small gesture didn't erase the past, but it cracked something open. For the first time, Cairo smiled faintly. "Maybe you're not as heartless as I thought." "Don't spread that rumor," Grant said dryly. Hours bled into another long night. The fluorescent lights buzzed, and fatigue painted everyone's faces. Cairo's eyes burned from staring at code. Grant handed him a cup of coffee, the gesture awkward, almost paternal. "Black, no sugar." "I guessed." "Good guess," Cairo murmured, taking it. The warmth seeped into his hands. "My father used to make coffee just like this," he said absently. "Said bitterness keeps you awake." Grant leaned against the table. "Sounds like a wise man." Cairo gave a sad smile. He was. The world just didn't treat him that way. "What happened to him?" Grant asked quietly. Cairo hesitated. "He worked for a tech firm years ago. He found out they were manipulating data, hiding losses. He tried to expose it, they blacklisted him, ruined him. He died before anyone cared." Grant felt the air leave his chest. The words hit too close. "What company?" "You wouldn't know it," Cairo said, shaking his head. "They merged with someone bigger years ago." Grant's heart thudded. He didn't press further. But a cold suspicion whispered in his gut. Could it be Carmine? He pushed the thought away. Across the room, the agents reviewed evidence, frustration mounting. We're getting nowhere, one said. The virus had internal clearance but no digital fingerprint. Cairo straightened. Then we're not looking at the right layer. Whoever did this didn't leave a trail because they were part of the architecture. He pulled up the oldest design files from Voss Dynamics Foundation year. Grant's Foundation year. Who built your original security framework? A contracting team. Most of them moved on. Can you get me the names? Why? Because one of them might have left a ghost key, something buried so deep it survived every update. That's how they got in. Grant nodded. I'll get you the archives. Over the next 12 hours, they worked in sync, like two halves of the same mind. Cairo decoded, Grant interpreted old business records. There was no hierarchy now, just purpose. At one point, Grant said quietly, "You remind me of my son." Cairo looked up. "You have one?" "Had," Grant corrected. "He's alive, just gone. We don't speak." "Why?" Grant's eyes dimmed. "Because I forgot to listen." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. By evening, exhaustion blurred their edges. Cairo leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "You ever think about how strange this is? You, me, same room, after what happened." "Life has a twisted sense of humor," Grant said. "Maybe it's trying to teach us something." "Like what?" "That the people we underestimate are usually the ones who end up saving us." Cairo stared at him for a long moment, the corners of his mouth twitching. "You're learning fast." Grant smiled, not the polished CEO smile, but something real, almost boyish. For the first time, they both laughed. It was brief but warm, a fragile bridge forming between two worlds. The agents watching from afar exchanged glances, the tension that once thickened the room now felt lighter. By midnight, the logs revealed a lead, a user account accessing encrypted servers under Grant's own authorization code. "Someone forged your signature," Cairo said, frowning. "But how, unless they had access to my personal device?" Grant realized. "My private terminal at home." "You mean someone close to you?" Grant nodded slowly. "There's only one person who could have had that clearance." His eyes darkened. "My former head of development, Clive Hartman. He left the company 2 months ago. Said he wanted to start fresh." Cairo's hands hovered over the keyboard. "Then he's the ghost. The breach isn't over, he's watching us right now." They exchanged a look of shared adrenaline and understanding. For the first time, they weren't just boss and subordinate. They were a team. And maybe, just maybe, they were starting to trust each other. The next morning broke grey and heavy, the kind of sky that made the city feel small beneath its weight. Inside Voss Dynamics, the tension felt sharper than the chill. Everyone moved quieter, slower, waiting for the next revelation to drop. Grant and Cairo hadn't slept. They sat side by side at the terminal, surrounded by coffee cups and blinking monitors, the room lit only by the pale blue glow of code streaming across screens. They were close, dangerously close, to the truth. Cairo's fingers danced across the keyboard, decrypting archived emails and security records that hadn't been opened in years. "There," he whispered. "Hartman rerouted code access through a ghost protocol built into your legacy network. It's been active for months." Grant leaned in, eyes narrowing. "Months? That means this wasn't revenge for being fired." "No," Cairo said softly. "This started long before that. He's been planning this." He clicked another file, one that didn't belong. It was labeled Project Legacy. Inside was a chain of old internal memos. The first line made Cairo's heart freeze. Subject, Acquisition of Bennett Technologies. His pulse spiked. "What is this?" Grant frowned. "Bennett Technologies. I remember that name." Cairo's voice trembled. "That was my father's company." Silence filled the room. He was one of the small tech founders your company absorbed 15 years ago. He created the foundation for predictive cyber models, the same kind your systems are built on. Cairo looked at him, eyes dark with disbelief. My father worked for you, didn't he? Grant's mouth opened, but no words came. He walked to the window, the city blurring beneath the storm outside. I didn't know, he whispered. I wasn't CEO then, I was running operations. But I remember the acquisition. There were complications. Complications. Cairo's tone sharpened. You mean the part where they stole his technology and buried his name? Grant turned. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. But it did. Cairo's voice cracked, raw and trembling. He spent his life building something pure, something that could protect people. And your company turned it into a profit engine. They ruined him. You ruined him. Grant's throat worked. I was just following orders. And that's supposed to make it right. Cairo stepped forward, emotion breaking through the composure he'd held for days. He believed in integrity. He believed that if you did good work, people would see your worth. But instead, you built your empire on his bones. Grant's voice dropped low, heavy with shame. You're right. The words hung in the air like confession. I remember him now, Grant continued. He came to me once, your father, said his name was Isaac Bennett. He begged me to protect his research. Said it was being misused. I didn't listen. He looked up, eyes glassy. I told him to take the payout and walk away. Cairo's chest tightened, fury and heartbreak colliding. That payout cost him everything. His company, his reputation, his health. He died believing he'd failed. And I let it happen, Grant whispered. Because I wanted to climb higher. Because I thought the world only respected winners. He turned away, shame radiating off him like heat. Your father was the better man. The silence that followed was suffocating. For the first time, Cairo didn't have a comeback. The truth had been buried for years, and now that it was in the open, it felt too heavy to carry. His hands shook. He sank into the chair, staring at the floor. All this time? I thought I was just trying to prove myself. But I've been chasing ghosts. Grant sat across from him. You were trying to finish his story. And you were the villain in it, Cairo said bitterly. Maybe I still am, Grant replied. But maybe it's not too late to change the ending. Cairo glanced up, eyes burning. You think redemption's that easy? No, Grant said softly. But I think facing the truth is where it starts. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, thunder rolled again, as if the sky itself were purging something. Cairo opened another file, scanning the hidden metadata. Hartman knew about this acquisition, he said suddenly. He left breadcrumbs in the code that point straight to it. That's why he targeted you. He wanted this truth to come out, to destroy you with it. Then he succeeded, Grant murmured. No, Cairo said quietly. Not yet. He pushed the keyboard toward Grant. You still have a choice. Help me take back what was stolen, not just from me, but from everyone who believed in what technology could be. Grant looked at him, the weight of decades in his eyes. You're asking me to make it right. I'm asking you to mean it this time. Grant nodded slowly, resolve settling over him like armor. Then we start tonight. Together, they dove deeper into the archives, reconstructing fragments of Isaac Bennett's original code. It was elegant, pure, like a digital fingerprint of a mind that believed in creation over competition. As Cairo read line after line, he could almost hear his father's voice again, the world breaks what it fears. For the first time, Grant understood what he'd taken part in. Your father was a genius, he said quietly. No, Cairo whispered. He was just good. That's rarer. The night stretched long, but neither left their seats. As dawn crept in, the code revealed its final secret, a dormant failsafe buried in the company's foundation. It was a key, one that could permanently shut down Hartman's ghost system and erase every trace of corruption linked to the acquisition. But activating it would also wipe out every system Voss Dynamics had built on top of it, billions in assets, years of work, all gone. Grant stared at the blinking cursor. If we do this, we lose everything. Cairo met his gaze. Maybe that's the point. For a long time, the older man said nothing. Then, slowly, he nodded. Your father deserved better. So do you. He reached for the keyboard. Let's finish this, together. As their fingers moved across the keys, the two men, one burdened by guilt, the other by legacy, began rewriting not just code, but fate itself. The room hummed with the electricity of purpose. For the first time, they weren't fighting each other. They were fighting for something greater. When the final line executed, Cairo leaned back, exhaling shakily. It's done. Grant nodded, voice low. No. It's just beginning. Outside, the first sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the glass walls gold. Two men, once enemies, now sat in its glow, bound by truth, forgiveness, and the echo of a man who had believed that light could outlive darkness. The next 48 hours felt like breathing after drowning. The breach had been neutralized, Hartman's shadow system disabled, and the truth of the Bennett acquisition quietly documented for the federal investigators. But inside the sealed floors of Voss Dynamics, something even more profound had shifted. The energy between Cairo and Grant no longer hummed with rivalry or distrust, it pulsed with fragile understanding. Morning light spilled across the glass office where they worked side by side, silent but synchronized, finishing system cleanups and cross-checking backups. The chaos that once filled the building had softened into a calm rhythm, the rhythm of two men rebuilding something far larger than code. Cairo noticed Grant's movements had changed, the arrogance that used to define every gesture had melted into quiet intent. He asked questions instead of issuing orders. He listened. Sometimes he even laughed, low, genuine, unexpected. And Cairo, though still guarded, found himself responding in kind. Late one evening, they sat at the long conference table littered with papers, coffee cups, and half-eaten sandwiches. Outside, the rain whispered against the windows, a familiar melody. Grant leaned back, studying the young man across from him. You ever realize, he said softly, that sometimes the people you're meant to learn from don't come as mentors, they come as reminders? Cairo raised an eyebrow. Reminders of what? Of who we were before success made us forget. Cairo smiled faintly. And who were you, Grant Voss, before the world crowned you king of glass towers? Grant chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. A kid who wanted to build something that mattered. I thought money would prove it did. Did it? Cairo asked. Grant's gaze drifted to the city lights below. No. It just proved how much I'd lost trying to matter. Cairo's silence was understanding, not pity. Maybe that's what this was all for, he said finally. To remind you that worth doesn't come from what you build. It comes from who you build it with. The words landed softly, but Grant's throat tightened. For all his power, no one had spoken to him like that in years. You sound like your father, he murmured. Cairo looked down, eyes glistening. He used to say things like that when the bills were late and the world didn't care. Grant hesitated, then said something that surprised even himself. If I could go back, if I could tell him I was sorry, I would. Cairo's eyes lifted, searching his face. You just did, he said quietly. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, it was healing. The kind of silence that says we finally see each other. Hours later, they moved their conversation to the rooftop terrace, a rare pocket of calm high above the sleepless city. The wind carried the scent of rain and electric night. Grant leaned against the railing, hands clasped. When I started this company, I told myself I'd build a legacy, he said. But maybe a legacy isn't what you leave behind. Maybe it's who you lift up while you're still here. Cairo smiled faintly. Then you've got time to start over. And you? Grant asked. What happens after this? You've proven yourself. You could go anywhere. Cairo looked out over the skyline. I used to think success meant revenge. But now, I think it means peace. Grant nodded slowly, the words settling deep. You deserve that. So do you, Cairo replied. The air between them felt light, almost sacred, two men standing on opposite ends of a story that had started in anger and was ending in understanding. Grant turned to him. You know, I never had the chance to thank you properly. You already did, Cairo said, smiling. You listened. Grant chuckled. That's new for me. Keep practicing, Cairo teased. They both laughed, a sound that echoed softly against the steel and glass, carried by the wind. For a few precious minutes, they weren't CEO and genius, or billionaire and underdog. They were just two souls who'd survived the fire and learned how to breathe again. When they returned inside, a new sense of ease followed them. The staff who once avoided Cairo now greeted him with respect. Lydia, the assistant who had once looked through him, now brought him coffee and whispered, "You're a miracle worker." Cairo smiled politely but said nothing. His victory wasn't in recognition, it was in reconciliation. That evening, Grant called an emergency board meeting. As the directors filed in, murmuring, he stood at the head of the table, calm and unflinching. Effective immediately, he said, Voss Dynamics will begin an internal restitution program to credit the original creators of any acquired technology used in our systems. Gasps rippled through the room. We built our empire on brilliance we didn't always honor, he continued. That ends today. One of the board members scoffed. That could cost us millions. Grant looked toward Cairo, standing quietly in the corner. Some debts are worth paying, he said. Especially the ones you can't measure in money. The board fell silent. Cairo met his gaze and nodded once, a silent thank you. After the meeting, Grant walked up to him. Your father's name will be restored, he said. And so will yours. Cairo's throat tightened. You didn't have to. Yes, I did, Grant interrupted. Because this time, I'm doing the right thing for the right reason. It was the first time Cairo truly believed him. That night, the two of them shared a quiet drink in the dim glow of the office. Grant raised his glass. To second chances. Cairo clinked his glass lightly. To finally earning them. The moment hung in the air, soft and honest. For the first time in his adult life, Grant Voss felt peace, not the kind that comes from victory, but the kind that comes from surrender. And Cairo felt something he hadn't felt since his father's death, closure. The kind that doesn't erase pain, but redeems it. Outside, the city lights shimmered like scattered stars. For the first time, they weren't a battlefield. The peace didn't last. It never does, not in stories built on buried truths. The morning after the board meeting, the world outside Voss Dynamics erupted. News networks picked up the internal leak. Someone had released files detailing every unethical acquisition the company had ever made, including the Bennett Technologies story. Headlines screamed Billionaire's empire built on stolen genius. By noon, the company's stocks plummeted. Protesters gathered outside. Reporters swarmed the lobby. Grant stood in his office, watching chaos unfold below. His jaw was tight, his eyes hollow. Who did this? He muttered. Cairo rushed in, holding his tablet. It wasn't me, I swear I didn't say it was you, Grant snapped, though the edge in his tone betrayed something sharper, fear, betrayal, maybe both. Then who? Hartman, Grant said. He's back. This is retaliation. Cairo frowned. He shouldn't have access. We locked him out completely. Unless, Grant turned, realization dawning. Unless someone let him in. He grabbed his phone, barking orders to the security team, demanding traces, but every system they checked came up blank. The ghost had returned. Screens flickered around them, displaying a single message in red text, you can't delete the past. Cairo's stomach sank. He's taunting you. No, Grant whispered. He's taunting us. For the first time in weeks, the fragile trust between them trembled. The board demanded Grant's resignation. The FBI returned for questioning. Within hours, the building that had once been a monument to power became a fortress of blame. That night, after 14 hours of crisis management, Grant found Cairo still at his desk, working furiously to track the breach signal. "You should go home," Grant said, his voice rough. "You think I can just walk away?" Cairo snapped. "This is my father's name too, remember? You promised me you'd fix it." "And I will," Grant said. "But not if you burn yourself out." Cairo's eyes flared. "Don't tell me how to fight for what's mine." Grant's expression hardened. "I'm not your enemy." "Then stop acting like one," Cairo shot back. "Every time things fall apart, you go back to control, to power, to doing things your way. You don't trust anyone, not even the people trying to help you." "Trust is earned," Grant said quietly. "And I've learned what happens when I give it too freely." Cairo stood, slamming his laptop shut. "No, you learned what happens when you abuse it." The words landed like a blow. Grant's jaw tightened, pain flashing behind his eyes. "You think this is easy for me? It's not supposed to be easy." Cairo yelled, voice breaking. "You can't buy your way into redemption, Grant. You have to bleed for it. You have to mean it." The room fell silent except for the low hum of the servers. Grant's shoulders sagged, the weight of years pressing down. "Maybe I don't know how," he said finally. "Maybe I'm too far gone." Cairo's anger faltered. "You're not," he whispered. "You're just scared." Grant looked at him, something raw flickering in his eyes. "You remind me too much of who I used to be," he said. "And I hate it." "Then stop hating the reflection and start fixing it," Cairo said softly. But before either could say more, an alert flashed across the screen. A new breach, deeper this time, targeting the company's backup servers. "He's trying to erase everything," Cairo said. "Not just your empire, the restitution files, the Bennett record, everything." Grant rushed to his console, hands shaking. "He's using my old credentials again." "How?" Cairo's face went pale as realization hit. "Because someone on the inside is still feeding him access." "Who?" "We won't know unless we trace it in real time," Cairo said, pulling his laptop closer. "But I'll need full admin permissions." Grant hesitated. "That gives you total control over the system." Cairo met his gaze. "Do you trust me?" The question hung heavy, the same one that had haunted them since day one. Grant exhaled slowly. "Yes." He entered his password and stepped aside. "It's yours." Cairo worked fast, typing commands that blurred together in a symphony of precision. Lines of code scrolled faster and faster until finally a name appeared in the trace log. "No," Cairo whispered. "It's Lydia." Grant's stomach dropped. "My assistant. She's been transmitting files to an off-site server for weeks. Hartman must have turned her." "She was loyal," Grant said weakly. "She believed in me." "People do desperate things when they think they're unseen," Cairo said, voice low. Grant's hands curled into fists. "We end this now." He stormed out of the room, Cairo following close behind. They found Lydia in the lower data vault, trying to extract a final drive. "Lydia!" Grant's voice thundered through the hall. She froze, guilt flashing across her face. "Grant!" "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," he said, stepping closer. "Why?" "Because he promised to expose what you did," she cried. "The acquisitions, the cover-ups, all of it. I thought maybe if the truth came out, people like Bennett would finally get justice." "And what about now?" Cairo said sharply. "You think destroying everything gives him justice? You're just finishing what they started, burying him all over again." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry." Grant shook his head. sorry doesn't undo the damage. She dropped the drive, collapsing against the wall. He's still in the system, she whispered. Hartman. He said if you tried to stop him, he'd take everything. Cairo looked at the monitor beside them. The system's core firewall was collapsing, one node after another. He's not bluffing, Cairo said. He's about to detonate a digital bomb. Everything tied to your servers, financials, archives, backups, gone in minutes. Can you stop it? Grant asked. Not alone, Cairo said. I need your biometric override to counter his failsafe. Grant hesitated only a second before placing his hand on the scanner. The system screamed warnings, lights flashing red. He's fighting us, Cairo gritted out. He's trying to lock me out. Then fight harder. Grant shouted. Sparks burst from the server. The air filled with static and panic. Cairo! Grant yelled over the noise. If this fails, it won't. Cairo shouted back, fingers flying. The last few seconds felt eternal. Then, with one final keystroke, the screens went black. The hum stopped. The silence was deafening. Cairo exhaled shakily, leaning back. It's over, he whispered. Grant stared at him, chest heaving. You did it. No, Cairo said softly. We did. But the relief was fleeting. The damage was done, the leak was global. By the next morning, Grant's company was on the verge of collapse. The restitution program was suspended. Lawsuits filed. His empire was burning. Cairo stood outside his office, watching as Grant packed up his things. You're really stepping down, he asked quietly. Grant looked up. It's what I should have done years ago. They'll crucify you. Maybe, Grant said, voice steady. But at least they'll do it to a man who finally told the truth. Cairo wanted to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Thank you, he said instead. Grant smiled faintly. No, Cairo. Thank you. You gave me something I hadn't had in years, a reason to care. Cairo's eyes burned. This isn't how it ends. Maybe not, Grant said softly. But it's how it's supposed to break so it can finally be rebuilt right. He placed a hand on Cairo's shoulder. You'll know what to do next. I trust you. Then he walked away, leaving the office and the empire in silence. As the elevator doors closed, Cairo stood alone in the glow of the empty room, his reflection staring back from the glass. He had won the truth, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like loss. For the first time, he wondered if redemption always required destruction first. The world had gone quiet for both of them, for silence heavy enough to feel like punishment. 3 days after Grant Voss stepped down as CEO, the building that once bore his name in silver letters stood stripped and hollow. Reporters called it the fall of the Titan, investors called it inevitable, but to Cairo, it was something else entirely, a reminder that the world doesn't always reward transformation, sometimes it destroys you for daring to change. He sat alone in the company's deserted server room, the same place where he had once fought to save everything, now just wires, dust, and echo. His reflection in the black monitor screens looked older, heavier. The victory he'd chased for years, restoring his father's name, exposing the corruption, felt hollow without the man who had helped him fight the final battle. The storm outside rattled the glass. Somewhere downtown, Grant sat in his penthouse, the glow of city lights spilling across stacks of old files and unopened letters. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten much either. The silence that had once been his shield now pressed on him like guilt. Every news channel replayed his downfall, every headline twisted his apology into humiliation. But beneath the ruin, something inside him felt strangely lighter. For the first time, there were no masks left to wear. Still, one question burned: had it meant anything to Cairo? Had the boy he'd once mocked, once underestimated, once come to admire, truly forgiven him? Or had his absence become proof that redemption was a one-way road? He looked down at the crumpled note on his desk, the last message Cairo had sent before disappearing from the public eye. Thank you for keeping your word. I hope someday the world will see what I saw in you. Grant had read that line 100 times. Each time, it cut deeper. Because for all his efforts to make things right, he'd never actually told Cairo the one thing he'd needed to say, I'm proud of you. He poured himself a drink but set it aside untouched. He picked up his phone twice, 3 times, typing messages he couldn't bring himself to send. Until finally, as thunder rolled outside, he whispered, you can fix broken systems, but can you fix broken people? And for the first time, he didn't know the answer. Across town, Cairo was facing a choice of his own. The Federal Oversight Committee had offered him a position, head of the new National Cybersecurity Ethics Division. It was everything he had ever dreamed of: recognition, power, respect. But something in him resisted. It didn't feel earned, not like this. He kept thinking about Grant, about that rooftop night where they had spoken about legacies and second chances. About how peace wasn't about revenge, but about choosing who you became after pain. And now, standing on the edge of everything he'd ever wanted, Cairo realized he wasn't sure who he was without the fight. He opened his laptop, scrolling through headlines, interviews, the chaos that still surrounded Voss Dynamics. And then he saw it, a small article buried deep in a tech blog, former Billionaire Fund's anonymous scholarship program for underprivileged innovators. No photos, no press conference, just a simple line, dedicated to the dreamers who build despite being unseen. Cairo stared at it for a long time, the words blurring. He knew it was Grant. He didn't need proof. He didn't need credit. He just knew. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, he smiled. That night, he stood at his father's grave under the soft drizzle of rain. It's done, he whispered. They know the truth now. And he's trying, he really is. The wind brushed through the trees as if answering him. Cairo closed his eyes, letting the rain wash over his face. I think I'm finally ready to forgive him, he said softly. And then, almost as an afterthought, maybe even myself. The next morning, he made a decision. He packed his few things, grabbed his laptop, and headed to Grant's penthouse. The elevator ride felt endless, each floor a heartbeat. When the doors opened, Grant was standing there, surprised but not shocked, as if he had somehow known Cairo would come. You look terrible, Cairo said with a crooked smile. You should see the other guy, Grant muttered, and for a second, the tension broke. Then silence, deep, thick, honest. Why are you here? Grant finally asked. To ask you something, Cairo said. Are you done? Grant frowned. Done with what? With running from the man you've finally become. The words hit like a reflection in glass. Grant looked away. I don't have a company anymore, Cairo. I don't have power. I don't even have a name worth defending. Maybe not, Cairo said softly, stepping closer. But you still have purpose. And that's worth more than all of it. Grant studied him, this young man who had once been his victim, his savior, his mirror. Why are you really here? Because I got an offer, Cairo said. They want me to head the ethics division for cybersecurity. But I don't want to do it alone. Grant blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you to help me build something new, Cairo said. Not a company. Not another empire. Something real. A foundation for people like my father. For dreamers who never got the chance because someone richer decided they didn't belong. Grant was silent for a long moment, his throat tight. After everything I've done, you still trust me with that? You're the reason I can, Cairo said simply. Because I watched you lose everything and still choose to do the right thing when no one was watching. Grant exhaled, shaking his head in disbelief. You really are something, Bennett. So what do you say? Cairo asked. You ready to build something that actually matters? Grant looked out the window, the city stretching before them, broken but beautiful, like both of them. Yeah, he said finally. I think I am. The two men shook hands, not as enemies, not even as partners, but as equals. A new kind of alliance, born not from business, but from belief. For the first time in years, Grant felt the weight lift from his chest. You know, he said with a smirk, I used to think I was saving the world with code. And now? Cairo asked. Now I think maybe saving people matters more. Cairo laughed, the sound light and real. Then let's start with us. As the two of them sat down, drafting the framework for what would become the Bennett Voss Foundation for Ethical Innovation, the rain outside finally stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, catching the glass towers in golden light. Redemption, like morning, had found its way through the wreckage. 1 year later, the world had forgotten the scandal, the lawsuits, and the headlines, but it hadn't forgotten the work. The Bennett Voss Foundation had become a quiet revolution. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't corporate, it was human. The mission was simple: find unrecognized minds, fund their inventions, and make sure no one's genius ever got buried again. Its first office wasn't a skyscraper but an old renovated library, filled with recycled tech, mismatched furniture, and the warm hum of creation. And in the center of it all, Cairo Bennett sat behind a desk littered with sketches and circuit boards, surrounded by a team that believed in the impossible. On the far wall, framed in silver, hung the old Bennett Technologies blueprint, the design his father had made decades ago. Below it, a small plaque read, "To those who build even when no one believes." The air buzzed with life. In another room, Grant Voss stood before a group of young interns, sleeves rolled up, explaining how ethical innovation could change industries. The man who once ruled the world with arrogance now taught it with humility. Every word he spoke carried weight because it came from scars, not ego. When the session ended, the students clapped, not because of his name, but because of his heart. As they filed out, Cairo appeared at the doorway, leaning casually against the frame. "You're getting good at this," he teased. Grant smiled, wiping chalk dust off his hands. "Don't tell me you were recording. I still hate cameras." "Relax," Cairo said. "You're safe. For now." They both laughed, an easy, familiar sound. For all they had lost, laughter had become their favorite currency. "You know," Cairo said after a pause, "my dad would have liked you." Grant looked down, a flicker of emotion softening his features. "I hope so. I think about him sometimes." "You'd probably argue a lot," Cairo said with a smirk. "He didn't like billionaires." "Fair," Grant replied, chuckling. "Neither did you." "Still don't," Cairo said, "but I make exceptions." The exchange lingered between them, simple but heavy with meaning. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, the two of them walked to the rooftop terrace of the Foundation's building. It wasn't grand like the one at Voss Dynamics, but it felt alive, strings of warm lights, potted plants, laughter echoing from inside. They stood there quietly, watching the city below, a city they had both broken and rebuilt in their own way. Grant turned to Cairo. "You ever think about that day?" "The first one, the boardroom." Cairo smirked. "The day you called me a kid with a toy algorithm?" "Yeah." "Hard to forget." Grant winced playfully. "I deserved every bit of what came after." "You did," Cairo agreed, then smiled. "But you also earned every bit of what came next." Grant exhaled, his voice low. "I've spent my whole life trying to build something people wouldn't forget. But it turns out, the only thing worth building is something that outlives you or not your name." "Exactly," Cairo said, his gaze steady. "Legacy isn't about being remembered. It's about what keeps working after you're gone." The city lights reflected in Grant's eyes, soft and full. "You know," he said, "for a kid I once mocked, you turned out to be the best teacher I've ever had." "Guess we taught each other," Cairo replied. A gentle wind brushed past them, carrying the scent of rain and renewal. For a moment, both men just stood there, not as past and future, not as billionaire and underdog, but as two souls who had chosen growth over bitterness. The Foundation doors opened behind them and one of their interns called out, "Mr. Bennett, Mr. Voss. The prototype's ready." Cairo turned, excitement lighting his face. "You coming?" "Go ahead," Grant said. "I'll be there in a minute." Cairo hesitated, then nodded. "Don't take too long. The future's waiting." When he was gone, Grant leaned against the railing, watching the young team bustling inside, coding, laughing, dreaming. It was everything he'd ever wanted to build but had never known how. For the first time, he felt peace not because he had control, but because he had purpose. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, the old letter Cairo had written after the collapse. "Thank you for keeping your word," it said. "I hope someday the world will see what I saw in you." Grant smiled faintly. "He was right," he whispered. "They finally do." He looked up at the sky, the same skyline where once his name shone from glass towers. Now it glowed in something quieter, gratitude. When he joined Cairo inside, the lab lights flickered back to life, illuminating a small device on the table. "What is it?" Grant asked. Cairo grinned. "A failsafe. An AI that monitors corporate ethics, prevents exploitation before it happens. Think of it as a conscience coded into the system." Grant raised an eyebrow. "You built a digital moral compass." "We did," Cairo corrected. "I used your old architecture as a framework." It felt poetic. Grant chuckled. "You really don't let anything die, do you?" "Only if it's worth saving," Cairo said. "And some things are." The words hit home. Grant nodded, eyes damp. "Yeah, some things are." The prototype beeped softly, its system lighting up, a perfect fusion of two minds once at war, now in harmony. The room erupted in quiet cheers. Cairo turned to Grant and said, "We finally did it." Grant shook his head gently. "No, Cairo. You did it." "We did it," Cairo repeated firmly, and in that moment, both men knew this was what redemption looked like. Not applause, not headlines. Just quiet victory, shared between two hearts that had learned how to heal. As night deepened, the Foundation lights glowed like beacons against the city's dark sprawl. And somewhere out there, a young genius watching online saw the Bennett Voss name for the first time and believed they, too, could change the world. Pause later, as the camera fades to black, Cairo's voice echoes softly over the scene. "Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rebuilds it into something better. And sometimes, the person who broke you is the one who teaches you how to begin again." The music swells, hopeful, human, full of light. The story closes not with an ending, but a continuation. Because real redemption doesn't stop, it multiplies.